You know, sometimes the biggest ideas start in the most unlikely places. In 1983, a wild trip to Carnival in Brazil, of all things, ended up sparking a huge revolution in Norwegian education. We're going to go way back to the very beginning of EdTech, and it's a story about building a digital future with, well, not much more than shovels and a whole lot of grit.
Okay, I want you to really try and picture this for a second. A world with no laptops, no Wi-Fi. Forget Google Slides, presentations were literally done with plastic sheets and markers. That's the world we're about to dive into.
Yeah, this was the year 1983, when the future of tech-based learning was being built. And I mean that quite literally, from the ground up. All right, so let's get into it. What did high-tech even mean in a classroom back then? Forget your smartboards and tablets. Think bigger, bulkier, and honestly, a lot louder. Okay, so this was the toolkit. You had your giant paper flip charts, you had overhead projectors, and for the really cutting-edge stuff, we're talking BBC microcomputers that loaded programs from cassette tapes. Yeah, cassette tapes, onto these little black and white TV monitors. And get this, the guy at the center of our story, Morten Paulsen, he'd be using this exact same setup for another 10 years. So you might be asking, why the sudden push for all this? Well, the business world was absolutely desperate for people with what they called ICT competence. I mean, basically, anyone who could figure out how to operate these newfangled machines. The problem was, traditional universities, they just weren't moving fast enough to keep up.
But you know, this story isn't just about technology. It's also super personal. The whole journey to build this brand new college, it actually started with a trip that was about as far from a computer lab as you could possibly imagine.
So, picture this. It's February 1983, and Morten Paulsen decides to trade the freezing Norwegian winter for Carnival in Rio de Janeiro. His week was just a total whirlwind. We're talking body surfing, running from street fights. He even had a taxi with an exploding tire. This quote from him just nails it. It perfectly captures that culture shock that ended up sparking a lifelong connection to Brazil for him. And believe me, the adventure did not stop there. Once he got back to Norway, he met his life partner, Marie. Together, they ran the Oslo Marathon. They even went to Oslo's own, shall we say, attempt at a carnival. And on top of all that, he launched this pioneering ICT summer school for kids. I mean, he was literally filling a van with computers and driving them around to hotels and youth hostels. Yeah, 1983 was a lot. So all this personal energy, this incredible entrepreneurial spirit, it all got channeled into one massive project, founding NKI Datahøgskolen. This was going to be Norway's very first private college dedicated entirely to ICT. But here's the thing. Building a digital dream involved a ton of analog work. Morten talks about being in the basement of this old factory with nothing but a shovel and a wheelbarrow, clearing out crushed bricks and dirt just to make room for the school's main computer. I mean, this was not some sleek tech startup. It was a full-on construction site. And get this, when they opened their doors that September, while construction was still happening around them, 180 students signed up, just like that. 60 of them full-time and another 120 part-time. The demand was absolutely real, and it was immediate. So the technology at the heart of this whole college was an HP 3000 mini computer. The students were learning the COBOL programming language, and they used a word processor called HP Slate. Of course, they quickly nicknamed it HP Late. I guess some things about student life just never change, right? And this quote, it just captures that startup spirit perfectly. The team was young, they were super passionate, and they were really just learning as they went. They were driven by a vision, not some detailed business plan. And they were finding out firsthand just how incredibly hard it is to build something completely from scratch. But just as they were getting everything off the ground, the entire project was almost destroyed. And the crisis kicked off when a TV news reporter showed up and delivered this one really chilling line. "I'm not here to be nice." See, that reporter was there because of a huge, catastrophic blow that was aimed right at the students. I mean, seriously, what do you do when the very government you're counting on for support suddenly decides to pull the plug? And here it was, the bombshell. The government ministry that handles student loans, they rejected their application, flat out. For most of these students, no loan meant no college. This was a potential death sentence for the entire school. And the reason they got rejected, oh, this is the ultimate irony.
The ministry's problem was that they were using part-time teachers. But that was their whole point. That was their core strength. They were hiring professionals straight from the ICT field to make sure the education was actually relevant to the real world. Morten talks about this terrifying moment, standing in front of 100 angry, hostile students in a packed auditorium. But instead of folding under the pressure, they did what true entrepreneurs do. They got creative. They bypassed the government completely, went and negotiated a private loan deal with the bank, and just like that, they saved the college. So while this small team was fighting for the very survival of their college, the world outside was going through its own massive changes. It's kind of wild to place their struggle in the bigger context of everything else that was happening in 1983.
I mean, it was a year of incredible contrasts. On one hand, Norway was celebrating these huge sporting victories. But on the other, it was facing the grim reality of its first reported death from AIDS. Medical science was taking this giant leap forward with the first heart transplant in Scandinavia, and at the same time, the fight for freedom in Poland was being recognized with a Nobel Peace Prize. It was a time of just immense hope and really profound challenges.
And right in the middle of this backdrop of global change, you had this small team in Oslo, quietly laying their own foundation for the future. They were proving that sometimes the most monumental shifts can start with something as simple as a few shovels in a dusty old basement. So, what's the big takeaway from this story from way back in 1983? Well, first, it shows that real innovation isn't just about having a good idea, right? It's where personal passion slams right into a real-world need. Second, entrepreneurship is not always glamorous. Sometimes it really does mean grabbing a shovel. And maybe most importantly, it shows that a small, determined team can actually take on the establishment and win. It's just incredible when you stop and think about it. With basic construction tools and computers that we would consider, ancient relics today, they managed to build an entire institution that would completely reshape education in their country. And that really leaves us with one last question to think about. They did all that with so little. So with all the incredible technology and all the resources we have at our fingertips today, what future are we building?